All right, let's jump right in. We're going to be talking about something that's, well, pretty critical these days, the health of democracy itself. But we're going beyond just the usual headlines to look at a very specific threat, one that comes from the inside and is changing politics all over the globe.
So, how do democracies die today? It's a huge question, right? But the answer, it's probably not what you're thinking. It's usually not some big, dramatic military coup. Nope. It's more like a slow, quiet decay from the inside out, often led by the very people we elected. Okay, to really get a grip on this, we gotta be clear on our terms. You've probably heard the phrase democratic backsliding, right? Well, think of that as the symptom, just a general decline. What we're focusing on today is a very specific cause, something called executive aggrandizement. And that's the process. It's when a democratically elected leader starts to systematically tear down the guardrails, the very checks and balances that are supposed to keep their power in check.
All right, so here's the plan for this explainer. We'll start with the threat itself, then define the power grab, look at the playbook they use, check out a global scorecard to see how it all plays out, and then wrap up with how democracies actually fight back. Okay, first things first, let's frame this problem. We are not talking about some outside enemy or a general taking over. No, this threat, it comes from the winners of elections who then turn around and use their new power to dismantle the very system that got them there.
And this definition here really nails it. Executive aggrandizement is all about a leader going after two things at once, two fundamental pillars that are supposed to keep their power in check, what we call horizontal and vertical accountability. So, what are these accountability thingamajigs anyway? Let's break them down because they're at the very heart of this whole thing.
First up, you've got horizontal accountability. The easiest way to think about this, it's like the referees in a game. These are your institutions, the courts, the legislature, independent prosecutors. Their whole job is to make sure the executive branch, the leader, plays by the rules and doesn't go out of bounds. They're there to keep things fair.
And then you have vertical accountability. If the first one is the refs, this is the power of the fans and the sports reporters. It's us, the public. It's our power through fair elections, a free press that can call out fouls, and all those citizen groups that keep an eye on the game. It's how we, the people, hold our leaders accountable.
And here's the absolute key. Look at that word, both. A leader going after just one of these pillars, that could just be tough politics. But when they start a coordinated, two-pronged attack on both the refs and the fans at the same time, well, that's the giant red flag. That's the signal for executive aggrandizement, and it's a massive threat to democracy.
Okay, so what does this attack actually look like in practice? Let's get into the playbook because there are some very clear tactics that act as early warning signs.
It's a pretty methodical two-step process. First, they go after the institutional checks. Then, they try to weaken the public's ability to push back.
So, step 1, weaken the refs. This looks like stacking the courts with loyal judges or just getting rid of the ones who won't play ball. It means ignoring the legislature or taking away its power to investigate. You undermine those independent watchdogs. The whole goal is just to clear the field of any institutional obstacles.
And while all that is happening, they're also moving on to step 2, weakening the public's voice. We're talking about harassing journalists, calling news outlets enemies of the people, cracking down on activist groups, and the big one, messing with the election system itself to make it way harder for anyone else to win. So, the big question is, does this playbook actually work? Let's take a look at the global scorecard, because honestly, the results are probably not what you'd expect. So, a recent study looked at the period between 1989 and 2019 and found 26 clear cases of this happening. And just look at this map. This isn't something that only happens in one part of the world or in what people call fragile democracies. We've seen it everywhere: Europe, the Americas, Africa, even in wealthy, long-established democratic countries. Okay, now this is the most amazing part. Look at these numbers. Of the cases that finished, only about a quarter, just 27%, actually turned into a full-blown autocracy. Let that sink in. A full 50% of the time, democracy fought back and won. The leaders were forced out through totally normal democratic means, like losing an election or hitting their term limits. So what does that tell us? It tells us that trying to pull off one of these power grabs is a massive, massive gamble for the leader. In fact, the data shows they're just as likely to end up in exile or even jail as they are to become a successful dictator. It's a huge risk.
This is so important. It shows that democracies are not just sitting ducks. They can fight back, and they often win. So, what makes them so resilient? What are the keys? Well, it turns out the secret to democratic resilience is the very same things that are being attacked. It's having strong, independent courts, a legislature that actually does its job of oversight, constitutional term limits, a feisty, independent media, active citizen groups, and of course, electoral institutions you can trust. When those things are strong, the whole system can push back hard.
And that's why keeping an eye on these things is so important. You know, the health of a democracy isn't about whether or not people try to grab power. Someone will always try. The real test is whether the system is strong enough to stop them. Think of these institutions as democracy's immune system. They have to be strong enough to fight off the infection. So what's the big takeaway here? I think it's actually pretty hopeful. It shows us that democracy's defeat is not inevitable. Yeah, the playbook to take it down is real. But you know what? So is democracy's ability to fight back. Which leaves us with the real question, the one we all have to think about. What keeps that immune system strong?